I tell you what, I'm just a straight up fan of our guest today. The work that Ryann Peyton does in our profession, in our community, is so valuable. Valuable for attorneys like us, valuable for clients, and in turn, valuable for society. This work represents everything we're trying to do with the podcast, with my law firm, with practice. I'm just thrilled about the work that's going on, and very happy to have Ryann Peyton here today. So let's dive in. This is How to Start and Run a Law Firm. I'm Mark Lyda. Ryann Peyton serves as the director of the Colorado Office of Attorney Professional Excellence, also known as APEX, which is a program of the Colorado Supreme Court. APEX includes a nationally recognized attorney mentoring program, a startup incubator for law firms, and lawyer well-being programming. Ryann is a seasoned civil litigator who has been extremely involved in the bar at the national and local level and has won a lot of awards. A true leader in the profession. Ryann, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Okay, so there are two big things that I want from this conversation, other than to have fun. Really, so three things. Number one is have fun. Number two, I want to hear your story. This is a podcast. I don't want to hear the elevator pitch version. If anything, pretend you're on the elevator at my building, which is extremely slow. So let it breathe. How did you get where you are today? How did you craft APEX, combining programs, all of that? You have such an interesting career, so we want to hear your specific story, but also with your work incubating baby law firms, what have you observed? What works, what doesn't? What are the things that you have found help small law firms succeed, and what causes them to fail? So let's start with you telling us your story.
Sure. Well, here's the long version of my story. I consider myself an accidental lawyer because I went to law school really never intending to practice law. I wanted to be an FBI agent. And I went to, my undergrad was in psychology. And so I wanted to be, the behavioral science investigator person in the FBI. And somebody told me, well, a law degree would be really helpful with that. So you should go get a law degree. So that's really why I went to law school. But obviously that career path did not pan out for me. So I left law school in the middle of the recession in 2008 and was out there just trying to find a job as a lawyer. And that's how I fell into litigation, which was a very interesting career for a better part of a decade. I did a lot of civil litigation, family stuff, tax stuff, real estate stuff, civil rights, a lot of different type of practice. But what I realized when I was in that work was that even though I, was good at it, I was fine as a litigator, it really just didn't fill my soul. And so I got to a point where I had to decide, do I want to stay in the profession at all, or do I need to make a whole career shift? And that's really where I found this work, working with APEX, which was formerly known as CAMP, the Colorado Attorney Mentoring Program. So this role came along and I saw it as really a really great confluence of my skills and being able to stay in the profession and switch from, being a lawyer who practices to being a lawyer who takes care of other lawyers. And that feels much more aligned with who I am as a person. So that's how I got here.
I think if our audience is mostly people who are starting law firms or thinking about doing it or, have done it and they're trying to grow their law firm. One thing I really want people to hear is that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you need to keep doing it.
Yes.
So if you're at a job where maybe you're succeeding, but it's not filling your soul, like you said, or it's clearly the wrong type of stress for you, it's not just stress, but it's stress that disrupts your well-being, you don't have to keep doing it just because you're good at it. I think it's like, maybe it's from school or something where when you're good at something, you're encouraged to follow that path. You got to break free of that sometimes. You only have this one life. So don't be captive to your skill set in that way. So you're a good example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk so much about this in the work that we do in our office, and we really talk about it in the framework of professional identity. where folks come into the profession with an ideal and an idea of what it means to be a lawyer, what that looks like. People fall into
Mm.
roles, fall into jobs. Coming out of law school, everybody's got debt, got bills to pay. So you take that job and then suddenly you wake up, 5, 10 years later and realize this isn't for me, but you've developed a whole identity around that work. And so to transition, to pivot feels really hard because you might disappoint people. What does it mean for you if you're not a litigator anymore and everybody sees you as a litigator?
Right.
So I think a lot of people have that internal sense of this isn't for me. It's not filling my soul. But the identity they've created for themselves, that persona in the profession, keeps them locked in to roles. And it's really hard for a lot of folks to pivot.
This podcast is presented by Practiced, modern law practice management software. We built Practiced at my firm because we were tired of fighting our software. Workarounds, clunky systems, way too much admin. So we built our own, and it cut our admin time by over 70%. Practiced makes running a law firm feel lighter. Intake is fast. Engagement letters just work. Time, tasks, and expenses stop piling up. And Practiced's AI assistant can do anything a human assistant can do inside the system. You can also hand it your messy notes, forms, or questionnaires, and it generates clean, polished documents using your templates. Or just forward an email and a new matter appears. Practiced even helps you get more clients through marketing and advanced referral network features. Everything works right out of the box, no separate software for intake and case management, one system, no duct tape. And it's just $20 a month. All features, no add-ons, no nickel and diming. Get started in minutes at practiced.io. That's practist.io. That's me exactly, by the way. I went through that exact thing. And even today, I feel like I feel sort of bashful when I say that I prefer the business side of running a law firm and that sort of creative endeavor somewhat more than the day-to-day practice. I feel like that makes me not a pure lawyer or something. As if who cares if I am? Who cares if that's what I am? But I feel like I should be.
People always ask me all the time, well, when will you go back to practice? I say probably never. This is great. And yeah, I have this very expensive piece of paper that still hangs on my wall. I still have my license. It's active. I could go back to practice tomorrow if I wanted to, but I'm still a lawyer. And I still very much embody, what it means to be a lawyer, even though I don't engage in the profession in traditional ways.
Well, you certainly have this huge impact on the profession. And so tell us, partly just because I'm curious, because I've sort of watched it develop sort of from afar, sort of close up, but CAMP, the Colorado Attorney Mentoring Program, Legal Entrepreneurs for Justice, combined into Apex under the Colorado Supreme Court. Tell us how all that developed.
Absolutely. So CAMP, the Colorado Attorney Mentoring Program, was the first iteration of this office. That was founded in 2013 and really was only the second or third state to adopt a statewide legal mentoring program. We based that program off of programs that were happening in Ohio and Illinois at the time. So we brought it to Colorado, and it was great initially, and really I think made a great impact. But it was small, and the capacity for growth and sustainability was small. It was an Excel spreadsheet of mentors that the committee that formed CAMP had gone out and said, "Hey, will you be a mentor?" So they just had this Excel spreadsheet of mentors, and did their best to get the word out about it through the first 3 years. It really, took 3 years to kind of stand it up foundationally. But I think it's really neat that our Supreme Court invested in this early on. Like I said, being only one of 3 states in the nation to try to create an office like this under the Supreme Court's umbrella was a novel idea. And I think it took a lot of guts for the practitioners who built this and for the Supreme Court to say, yes, we want this in Colorado and to make that investment. So I came in as the second executive director in 2016, and my vision was really to build an empire of professional development. Can we create a one-stop shop for legal professionals to find what they need in terms of support? And I take this idea from, thinking about the guidance counselor that you had, in high school. And when you went to see the guidance counselor, they were there not only to talk to you about the academics and what was going well or challenges for you academically, but they were there to help you personally. What's going well at home? Where are the challenges and the intersection of your personal life and your academic life? And so we've taken that model and really put it into Apex. And so from 2016 to 2025, we really focus on that. How do we build that empire of professional development? So we expanded camp in a number of different ways in terms of our reach across the state, in terms of the different ways that people can mentor with us and be mentored with us. And then we acquired LEJ, Legal Entrepreneurs for Justice, in 2022. That was a standalone 501c3 when it was first started, and we can talk more about that, but and the challenges around that. But essentially, this was another time where the court said, yeah, we're willing to take this risk and invest in this incubator program because we see the value of helping solo small firm practitioners start up these organizations in order to serve that justice gap, those folks, that middle market legal consumer. And so that's really what LEJ is focused on. But in addition to the folks who come through LEJ, we're always putting out resources, materials, and professional development for solo small firm practitioners because we don't want them to be isolated in their practice. And then we built out the well-being program, which I'm happy to talk about as well.
Yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So the well-being program is called the Colorado Well-Being Recognition Program for Legal Employers. It's a mouthful, I know. We're working on that name, but the idea of it was to really change the narrative of well-being in the legal profession. So right now, a lot of the conversation around well-being is, Mark, if you just maybe did some yoga, drank a little more water, got a little more sleep, you're golden. You're going to be fine. And we know that that's not actually the case. There's no amount of yoga I can do to change the structures of the profession that keep people sick. So this program is meant to really focus on that, the structures, the systems, the cultures of the profession that are keeping people sick and going to the people with the power to change those systems and structures. So legal employers, the people who create, those containers in which we're all operating. So we're teaching those legal employers, which includes solo practitioners, how to create legal organizations that support well-being rather than putting the onus on the individual to do that.
Awesome. I mean, what incredible work. Okay, so little background context for people. By the way, when did LEJ start?
LEJ was started in 2019, was its first cohort year.
Okay, I was trying to remember. I used to do classes on business development, and I was trying to remember what year that was. And I think it was 2019, maybe very early 2020. It was in the before times.
Yes,
that's what I really remember.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for people who don't know, in Colorado, the Bar Association is a membership group, but it's not the attorney regulation body. That's the Colorado Supreme Court. So we're one of those states, for what it's worth. So that's why it makes a lot of sense that you're under the umbrella of the Colorado Supreme Court. A little background knowledge. Okay, I'll probably say it again, but I, as a member of the profession, just so appreciate the work that Apex and you personally are doing and have done. You're doing such great things for the profession, a profession which desperately needs those things to be done. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And that's really what we're here to do. It's, we are the caretakers of the profession and the people in it, and we take that role very seriously. When I talk to lawyers and LLPs and law students, I tell folks it's my job to help people to find their people, their place, and their purpose in the legal profession. And that just guides everything that our office undertakes.
That makes a lot of sense because I think it's got to be, ironically, a sort of common experience for people to feel isolated or that they're the only person like them or who thinks like they think in the legal profession, which usually isn't the case.
Absolutely. Isolationism is a huge issue in our profession. And in a state like Colorado, where we have a lot of space and land, it's geographically isolating for a lot of folks. And many of those folks are solo practitioners out in some of the frontier areas of Colorado who truly are the only. And so we really do want to create that connection, those relationships, and help people to find, where they belong in the profession.
What a great point. And yeah, I mean, and in a place like Colorado, it's like, it's a big state, but it's also hard to get to some of the places here. It's not like it's always an easy drive, for example. That's one thing I've noticed about LAJ is you definitely seem to have expanded beyond just a bunch of Denver lawyers in a conference room. There are always people teleconferencing in, video conferencing in. So that's very cool to see. All right, so let's dive in a little more to what you've learned from Legal Entrepreneurs for Justice. So this is an incubator for small law firms for people who aren't familiar with that concept. I know we're a leader here in it, but it's, now probably very common across the country, right? Tell us a little bit about what these small law firm incubators are.
Sure. I wish it was more common than it is, but right now there's truly only about 10 operating incubators across the country. And the idea is to create a cohort community-based model where we're helping small firms to upstart from the beginning. So providing these folks with all of the education tools and resources they need to start a law firm from the ground up. And so we teach them the business of law, how do law firms make money? What is the model here? How do you start a law firm? What kind of banking and trust accounts and malpractice insurance and all of that do you need? So all of that foundational component of just what does it mean to start a business. But then we also teach them modern law practice principles under an umbrella of just entrepreneurial thinking. So what makes LEJ different than just a traditional incubator where we're just helping practitioners to start law firms is that we're trying to help practitioners to start law firms that serve a particular part of the legal market. And to do that, we have to teach them how to practice a little bit non-traditionally, move them in a direction that is away from, traditional or typical practice models. And I'm happy to share more.
Yeah, tell us more.
All right, cool. So a little bit of background on this middle market real quick. So when you look at the legal market, it kind of exists on a spectrum from low to high. So on the low end of the legal market, we have those clients, those consumers who qualify for pro bono and legal aid. And so they're able to get services to a certain extent from those legal service providers. But not everyone who qualifies for those services can get those services just because of capacity and other limitations that those organizations have. And so that's not a foolproof plan for serving those folks who fall on the lower end of the legal market spectrum. On the high end of the legal market spectrum are those individuals and businesses who are able to work with legal practitioners at traditional rates and in traditional ways. So if, someone was asked to put down a $10,000 retainer that was going to be billed against at $500 an hour, there are people in the legal market who can afford to do that. But most people cannot. So, and we talk about these folks as everyday people like you and me, where if I had to hire a lawyer today and put down a $10,000 retainer, that would be pretty difficult for me. And then have that billed against at $500 an hour, probably not affordable. And obviously I don't qualify for pro bono and legal aid. So I'm kind of in this middle. And so what we've seen in the legal market over the years is this creation of this middle market of everyday people who don't qualify for legal services, but also really can't afford and don't want to work with practitioners at that upper range. And so many of them go without and proceed pro se in their legal matter, even though they would like to have representation. So the idea with these incubators is to help legal practitioners to build practices that work for that middle market legal consumer. And there's really two parts of that are important. One is the pricing model. So we work with practitioners to move them away from the billable hour, which research has shown that clients don't like, and we know it's not good for practitioners from a well-being perspective. So focusing more on value-based pricing, flat fees, helping practitioners to create pricing models that are, just away from that traditional billable hour model. So pricing is one part of it. The other part then is the service model, and not just, appealing to clients to say, give me your whole matter, I'll take it on and I'll send you the bill. But really creating different ways that consumers can engage with that practitioner. So unbundling services, limited scope services, do-it-yourself services, subscription services, so that clients can come in and work with that legal practitioner in the way that works best for that client. And we have found that both of those components, when put together, create more accessibility for consumers in that middle market. So that's what we're teaching folks in addition to that business startup is how do you build a practice that's going to serve and appeal to that middle market.
I absolutely love it. That's the mission, certainly, of my career and of our law firm here. Exactly. Lots and lots and lots of people need to be doing this because it is a huge justice gap that we need to bridge. So thank you for the work you're doing. I also think we need more good lawyers addressing the justice gap because sometimes it feels like there are good lawyers and there are affordable lawyers, but there's not enough crossover in that Venn diagram. So anybody who can address that should. And the other piece, in addition to everything you said, is that there really is a way to make this profitable for attorneys and small law firms. And I think that, that makes it sustainable when people are like, oh, I can make a nice living doing this, serving people better. Because basically you just get to keep more of the money you make if you're on your own, to put a blunt point on it.
Absolutely. And you get to choose the clients that you take as well. I know when I was in private practice, that was a gripe I had of when I worked at a firm is I had to take the client they gave me, whether I wanted to or not. And I think that autonomy to choose your clients helps you to choose clients that, are going to be aligned with the values of your organization, with your own values. And so they're going to be happy to pay you and you're going to enjoy the work more. And
That's
so
right.
it's you can be profitable, you can be sustainable, and you can be happier. I think with this kind of a model and being out on your own or in a small firm.
Yeah. Anybody for whom that doesn't resonate hasn't had a problem client yet. Because if you don't think client fit matters, you're going to find out.
Yep. And everybody does. Everybody finds out at some point in time where their line is and what their values are around client fit.
By the way, I wrote down your line, Empire of Professional Development. I think I'm going to use that in like the thumbnail or the title of this episode.
Perfect.
Okay. So in the billable hour, you're right. In terms of, we still do it. So we do all sorts of fees. We publish flat fees on our website, but we do still do the billable hour. And of course, working with practice, we're working with other firms that do the billable hour either exclusively or as part of their practice. It's kind of funny. Ryan, my co-founder, and I have talked about I'm pretty adamant we can't require people to meet with us before signing on to the product because of just how lawyers are with time. And he's like, well, everybody thinks their time is valuable. And that's true. But when you're billing it in 6-minute increments, it just really messes with your relationship with time.
Absolutely. And I don't mean to, throw shade on folks who use the billable hour. I think it's what the market expects. And there is an education element to this with clients where a lot of clients come in expecting the billable hour. And so you have to help them understand the benefits of a different model. And I know a lot of LEJ alumni have still retained the billable hour as an option for those clients who do want that or for matters or cases where that may be a better fit. As much as we would love to see flat fee work for a full litigation matter, it's tricky. It's really tricky and challenging to do. And so for those cohort members who do take on full litigation matters, the billable hour, is still a factor in how they're pricing that.
Yeah. We found that's been our experience. People love flat fees, and even people who hire us on an hourly fee basis appreciate that we offer flat fees and then let them choose. And the fact that we publish them, I think also gives people a greater sense of trust with us, because the feeling of hiring a lawyer must be so scary to just think, what the heck is this going to cost me? Like going to the emergency room with a broken leg and you don't have insurance or something. It's just like, I have no idea of even a ballpark of what this is going to cost me.
Exactly. Exactly. But the other thing, I mean, yes, it's not wanting to ask clients to just write a blank check or be afraid to hire a lawyer because they're unsure of the cost. But the other thing that I like about shifting the conversation away from the billable hour to flat fees and other mechanisms is that it requires you to help the client understand the value that you're providing for them. And so when we can shift the conversation with a client away from cost and to value, I think it helps both sides because the client's not actually buying your time. They're buying your
Right.
knowledge, your solutions. That's why they're hiring you, not for you to just spend time. And so when we can shift that conversation and help them to understand the value, then cost comes second. And frankly, they're willing to pay whatever that cost may be once they've bought into the value of what you're providing for them. And so I just like that conversation better. And I think as a consumer, that's helpful, right? Because we wanna feel that value for the money that we're spending. And so talking in a solutions oriented way rather than this is what it costs, this is what I charge, this is my hourly rate, just I think helps consumers to feel better about what they're buying.
That's a really, really good point. Okay, so speaking of Venn diagrams, obviously anybody in Colorado who's listening to this is likely to be interested in LEJ. So I've got the website up on my computer right now, coloradoattorneyexcellence.org, and there's a link there to apply to join LEJ. At the time that we're recording this, you have a current cohort going, so you're not accepting applications obviously for that cohort. But then what's your regular schedule for when people can think about trying to join up?
Sure. So we do accept applications year round, but the cohorts start each January. So we just launched our
Got it.
cohort for 2026. So the next cohort will launch in January 2027. We do information sessions a couple of times a month starting in March. And you can register for an info session on our website. And I always recommend people do that. It's about 30 minutes. It's webinar. We're happy to record it as well if you miss one. But it gives you a whole overview of the program. And so mostly we start to see applications come in the early fall, September, October, because they're due by Halloween every year. So if you're going to apply before Halloween. And then we typically will have an in-person social event, happy hour event in mid-October, where we invite all of our current cohort and alumni and some of our presenters and trainers to come and be available for questions and to meet folks who are interested. So that's always information that's on our website in the fall. So I would say if you're interested in LEJ, watch an info session, get familiar with the program, but then plan to apply sometime in September or October.
All right, excellent. And this is evergreen content. So there will be people listening at that time. coloradoattorneyexcellence.org. Easy to remember. Okay, so lessons from LEJ. Every year you have a bunch of people starting firms or looking to make their existing firms more successful. Mostly solos, or they might be working with a few staff people. You've also now opened it up to well, let's explain this. You've opened it up to LLPs. Tell us about that.
Sure. So about a year and a half ago, Colorado created a new licensure structure for what are called licensed legal paraprofessionals, and we call them LLPs for short. And these are, for the most part, folks who have worked as paralegals in the legal industry for a period of time or have gone to school and received a paralegal degree, who are given a limited license to practice law, essentially. And right now, that license is limited only to family law matters. But these folks are able to take on cases, take on clients. They can take things to trial now if they wish to. The rules just changed on that. So we have these LLPs that are now out there working in the family law space. And the idea behind the LLPs was exactly what we just talked about, to provide another option for legal consumers, especially in that middle market, even the lower end of that middle market, to be able to get legal assistance, but hopefully at lower rates than traditional attorneys.
So can an LLP have their own firm, or do they have to be under the umbrella of a firm?
Nope, they can start their own firm, their own business, and practice independently.
Okay, very cool.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right, so every year you have this fresh crop of starry-eyed dreamers starting their own law firm or looking to make their existing practice more successful. I want to hear about what has worked, what hasn't worked for them, what you've seen helps them succeed, what causes them to fail, and what are the big struggles they face. Let's take it one by one. What are the attributes or practices that you have seen really work well?
So the folks who are most successful that have come through LEJ have a lot of different qualities, but I think none of them are really surprising at the end of the day. So we see folks who are successful that are really great at working independently, good time managers. They have, executive functioning skills that allow them to do well in terms of working both on their business and in their business. And so I know that neurodivergence is such an important aspect to these conversations that we're having right now in the profession. But there is a level of executive functioning skills that I think is necessary to be successful in starting your practice.
Yeah. And yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, obviously, we're addressing executive functioning skills earlier in life than we did for most people who are now old enough to be practicing attorneys. So, I mean, do you have any suggestions on what are good ways to pick up or improve those executive functioning skills?
And I think for a lot of folks, coaching can be really helpful. There are executive functioning coaches out there, but you have to know yourself. And I think that that's the other part of this that is a line between success and challenge in LEJ is those folks who come in knowing where their gaps in skills are, where their challenges are from an executive functioning standpoint, do better because they're then able to go out and get that help. We find a lot of folks come into LEJ because they've not been successful in traditional legal practice models. And part of the LEJ process for them is actually learning more about themselves and getting to the point where they can then fill in those gaps. Some people come in already knowing that. Some people take most of the year to figure that out. And so I still find that to be a success because the goal here for us is not for everyone to have a business up and running by the end of the 12 months in the program. The goal is growth, and that looks different for everybody. And so I think for those folks who come in already knowing their executive functioning, strengths and challenges, they're just able to move faster. But I do think that the program eventually reveals to everybody where their strengths and challenges are in executive functioning.
Interesting. And, it didn't occur to me at the time, but when I came to your session on process mapping, I suppose that speaks to executive functioning skills, looking at all the steps that somebody takes to complete a task or that the firm takes to complete a recurring task.
Yeah. That's usually a point at which people recognize, oh, that's a skill gap for me. My brain doesn't quite work that way. And then we help them to figure out, well, how does your brain work so that we can help you structure your business in a way that's going to be successful for you.
Yeah, right. Totally. Okay. Other things you've seen, skills or attributes help people succeed.
So I do think that folks have to have the ability to hustle, not in, a kind of gross schmoozy sales way, but those folks who come into LEJ with the ability to go out and network and build relationships and are willing to try new things and jump into new cases or new practice areas and figure out what works and doesn't for them. I think they are ultimately more successful just because they've got that hustle in them. There are folks who come to LEJ who really struggle with the idea of sales, of networking, of, what it takes to market. themselves. And so, again, they eventually get there. But those folks who come in with that hustle mentality just tend to get off the ground a lot faster.
My dentist said you're grinding in your sleep. I said, appreciate it, big dog.
Exactly.
That's a meme I saw. Anyway, yeah, I know. It's just kind of like lack of activity is what I see when I see businesses fail.
Yeah, I mean, people just put up a website and expect the phone to start ringing, and that's just not the case. And so we spend time with folks helping them understand that your website is not your only marketing strategy. You do have to have a strategy. It has to work for you, but you're going to have to get out into the community and build these relationships with folks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There are referral networks where you can get some passive cases going. There's legal insurance as well. First of all, you have to be proactive about getting on those panels, about signing up for those.
Yeah.
You also have to be proactive about if they do send you clients, you got to jump on the callbacks. You know, you have to be responsive to the client. And then, you know, practicing law requires a lot of proactivity, not just getting clients, but like managing a case or a matter, a transactional matter, whatever the case may be. So those are transferable skills. They're going to be used in all phases of the practice. That actually makes me curious. I wonder what are this, it seems like a lot of the skills that would make you successful maybe in a traditional practice would also make you would also help you be successful in a totally non-traditional environment, like, you know, being proactive and hustling and things like that. But there are also differences, such as the sort of like, don't fence me in need for independence versus the need for security that would lend itself more toward a traditional environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to these folks were trained how to be lawyers and legal professionals, not business owners. And
That's right.
I've seen folks who come into LAJ having had businesses that they've started in the past or been maybe their second career lawyers who are coming from the tech space or other professional spaces. They do tend to do better because they already have that business mindset and they understand the hustle and they understand the balance between building the business and then working within the business. And so they just tend to have a leg up because the legal profession, law school, everything is boxed into how do you be a practitioner. And the really practitioner-minded folks who come through LEJ just tend to have a slower start because they're practitioners. And we really have to pull the business owner out of them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you particularly have to hustle because we don't have the ability to accept investors like many other businesses, which may or may not be easy to come by, depending on the type of business and the sort of macroeconomic cycle and all of that. But law firms have to bootstrap because non-attorneys can't own law firms. So you know, at least as of now. So all the more reason that you need to hustle. What other attributes or skills do you see succeeding? We'll keep going until we exhaust the list.
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, the last one, I mean, because I would say again, success is defined so differently for everyone. But the last one that I think really makes a difference for folks who come into LEJ are folks who have really thought about and explored their relationship with money. And I say that because a lot of people have a very tense relationship with money. Their personal finances, the way that they view money, the way that they value themselves, and you know, and how that translates into what they charge for their services. So there's a psychological element here around money and the value of money for folks that I think can make a difference in the success of a startup.
Wow. That is such a good point, and that really resonates with me. I've gone through all of that as well. And when I was planning to start my own firm, and then I did start it, I will say I became extremely frugal
Mm.
So I would say people who knew me around that time and since then would probably call me cheap. And people before that, probably wouldn't think to describe me that way. But then also, yeah, of course, all of those feelings that come up when you're trying to collect on a bill or you're sending out an invoice or you're setting your hourly rate, and how do I value myself and how do I view my own work and am I worth it and all of that sort of stuff. It's sometimes easier when you're coming from a firm and you're like, well, objectively, the market billed me out at this rate and now I'm doing less than that. So it's the least they could do is to pay my now lower hourly rate or something like that. But especially if you don't have that ability, and if you're trying to do that sort of like value pricing around flat fees and what value am I really providing, all those feelings come bubbling up. What types of attitudes or relationships with money have you seen succeed versus not, versus be more problematic or more of an impediment?
So, I mean, there are folks who come into LEJ and absolutely know their value, and they're going to charge this flat fee or this hourly rate because they know that's what they're worth. And then you have folks who come in and their first 5 clients that they get when they open their doors, they end up not charging them at all because they're afraid that that client's going to say no or not pay it because that client didn't feel like they got the value. So it's actually very common that we see folks come in and not charge for their services for months. And we have to have these conversations about, well, that's not sustainable for you. If you don't value what you're doing, how will the client value what you're doing? And so, maybe it's less of a relationship with money and more of a psychologically, where are you around your own value and your own self-worth?
Yeah, totally. I've seen both ends of the spectrum as well, to your point, because, people are by and large responsible for their own business development here at our firm. So I've seen both ends of that spectrum as well. People too bashful to charge, and others who say, I'm worth X amount, but then aren't getting clients at that amount as well. So, you have to listen to the market when you're doing that too. And sometimes that's just a matter of hustling more, marketing more, networking more, but sometimes it could be a matter of adjusting your rate as well. So it's a real balancing act. Okay, moving on. I suppose this could be like the flip side of what you've seen work, but talking about some roadblocks people might put up for themselves, or skills or sort of attributes that, and everybody has a different definition of success. That's a very good point. But what have you seen sort of get in people's way?
So the first one are folks who, and I want to make this distinction really clear, folks who are running away from something rather than towards something. And what I mean by that is we've seen folks come through the program who were not successful in traditional legal practice or traditional legal organizations, or something happened in their life or in their practice where they said, I'm out, I've got to make a change. And they just jump to this and say, well, I'm going to hang my own shingle. I'm going to go out on my own. But it's really because they're running away from something that scared them or didn't work for them, rather than having decided, this is for me. I'm building a business. I'm invested in this long term. I'm going toward this change in my career. And I think it's really hard for people to know sometimes if they're running away or running toward. But for those folks where it becomes clear that they are really running away from something in the practice of law that doesn't work for them, they struggle. They absolutely struggle in the program, because they find that even though they're not in the traditional legal model anymore, they still have to operate within a justice system, within the profession that has some of that boxed in guardrail. As much as we're helping them to build and think outside of that box, the box still exists. And so whatever they're running away from tends to follow them into LEJ.
That's interesting. That actually makes me reflect a little bit as well, because, like we discussed at the top of the hour, I felt like traditional law firm life and commercial litigation wasn't filling my soul. So, part of my starting my own firm was that I didn't feel like that worked for me. But I was also really excited about starting my own firm, and I planned it for like a year before I took the leap and all of that sort of stuff. So, um, so I guess, yeah, that's some reflection for people to do about, are you choosing another path, and maybe the other path wasn't the right fit for you, but you're doing more than just running away from what wasn't a good fit. You're choosing a path that is really positive.
Exactly, exactly. And some folks don't figure that out until they're halfway through the program, and then they'll choose to leave if it if building a business is not really what they want to do. But even those folks who stay and build the business tend to struggle to get that business off the ground because whatever they're running from is still very much heavy on them.
What else have you seen get in people's way?
Burnout. Burnout is probably the biggest thing that, the biggest reason why we see people close up shop or transition out of solo practice back into a firm or an organization is burnout. And I don't think we do enough within LEJ and certainly within the profession to help people manage this. But one of the things that happens is people are successful. They get their business off the ground. They've got clients coming through the door. But a lot of our cohort members are working in practice areas that are very much people focused, the people law, family law, criminal defense, immigration. And so they are not ready for the emotional burden, the vicarious trauma that they alone are now carrying as the practitioner, as the business owner. It all falls on them. And so we see people burning out quickly once they get their doors open and they've got this influx of clients. And so managing that burnout, or I guess an inability to manage that burnout, is something that is very challenging.
Let's talk about managing burnout. My experience with that at my former law firm, I was feeling it coming on, and I pictured it like they do in the mountains, in a national forest, right? They'll do controlled burns to prevent a massive wildfire. So I thought of my transition as being like a controlled burn. I'm going to step away from what I'm doing, but instead of completely flaming out at it, I'm going to try to do it in sort of an orderly way that maintains my reputation and allows me to move forward in a positive way in my legal practice and all of that. So that was a helpful mental framework for me, maybe as a Coloradan, to think about a controlled burn as burnout prevention. What else? I mean, you are a true expert on this. I just have sort of what happened to me or what I went through. How do you do burnout prevention or management?
So one of the things we do is we talk about burnout the right way. And what I mean by that is so often people have this idea that burnout is only for people who hate what they're doing, and that's why they burn out. And it's not. Burnout actually happens more often to people who love what they're doing. And so they do it a lot. And so just even changing that conversation to help people know that even though you love what you do and you love your clients, burnout is still very much possible. We also talk about the fact that these particular professionals are more likely to burn out because they are cause lawyers. They're justice oriented. Right. And so they don't want to say no. They're going to go full steam into everything that they're doing. And that's just not sustainable. And so this idea of the controlled burn that you're talking about, it's pretty similar to the way we talk about it as well, because burnout isn't something that just happens overnight. You don't go from I'm fine to I'm burnt out. It is a slow burn as it goes. And so we try to help people recognize, along that pathway of the slow burn, where they need to cut back, where they need to ask for help, where they need to get resources, where they need to take time away. But I think that's the other thing about going into solo practice for folks who have come from traditional from firms or other organizations is the solo practitioner doesn't know how to turn anything off because there's no one there to catch it if they're not there, if they're not working. And so I think a lot of these
Right.
cohort members don't think about that until suddenly they've not taken a day off in months, or haven't taken a
Yeah.
vacation in a year. And they realize, oh, well, that's because I used to be able to hand it off or put it out of office and somebody else would deal with it. And now it all falls to me. So I think part of the burnout prevention rather is to get them understanding early on in the process that, yes, you are the solo, you are the one and only, but that doesn't mean you can't turn it off. You can't walk away and take care of yourself when you need to.
Absolutely. And do you do any and by the way, the people you're working with, they don't have the luxury of not caring. Like you said,
Right.
they're cause-oriented people, and that can be a burden. Do you encourage or discourage people to grow their practices, to add team members to their staff or other attorneys? What's your outlook on that?
So we talk very early in the program about creating your team, mostly in terms of a financial team, because so many folks take on the financial elements of their business without any idea of what they're doing. They're reluctant to hire a bookkeeper before they have income. And then suddenly they have clients coming through and they've got money coming in and out, and now they don't have a bookkeeper and they're trying to do it themselves, which adds to the burnout. So we talk very early on, and even before you have revenue, going out, identifying a bookkeeper, having a tax accountant, having a financial advisor, a financial planner, because that's the other thing people don't think about when they're starting a business is now you have an asset, and you need to work with a professional who's going to help you understand how much money do you need to bring in every year, and what's going to go to this and what's going to go to that. So really helping them to create that financial team around them initially. So we talk about that in the beginning, and then as they're leaving the program, we talk about scaling. How do you bring on, even if it's a virtual assistant or a contract paralegal or a contract attorney? How can you start scaling your business to take some of this off of you? But it's a challenge because, again, people are in different places by the end of the program, and some of them couldn't imagine scaling, and
Right.
others are like, yes, I need the help right now. And so everybody's different.
My 2 cents on that is baby steps. Take small bites, as my sister-in-law would say. So I called a legal staffing agency and I said, I would like a remote paralegal. They said, okay, for how many hours a week? I said, 2. 2 hours a week. They said, we haven't ever had anybody ask for 2 hours a week before. And I was like, well, I just don't want to get in over my head. And it was in steps that small. And now, there are so many resources available for finding people, working with people virtually, that you really can take those baby steps. That's what I suggest for that. And it adds up over time, just like a little river creating the Grand Canyon. We've grown fairly large, but we've just always taken baby steps.
Absolutely. And each step is an investment. And we talk about that as well. It's an investment in your business. It's an investment in yourself, especially when you're asking for help. And again, that goes back to the business mindset that a lot of them don't have. And so helping them to see the investment within within their business and how that plays out over time.
Yeah. All right. Any other parting thoughts that you'd like to instill in all of the, I guess, not everybody's from Colorado, so not everyone will have the opportunity to come meet you and be a member of an LEJ cohort. What pieces of advice do you give to people starting their own firm?
Well, I don't feel like I'm in any position to give advice to people because I haven't done it. And I always say that to folks that, I have not been in their shoes, and I don't pretend to know everything, just what I've learned from being a part of this work now for several years. But what I tell folks is that anybody has the capacity to do this. I have seen people be successful right out of law school. In fact, those are sometimes the most successful LEJ cohort members are those folks right out of law school. I've seen people
Mm.
come in 20 years into their practice and completely pivot into this work and be successful. It's something that anybody can do if that's where your heart is. If you have a plan, if you have a strategy, it's possible. And you don't have to be the greatest entrepreneur. You don't have to be the greatest networker in the world. You just have to show up authentically in your practice. And this is absolutely something that is available to anybody.
Those are wonderful, inspirational words to close on. This might bring it down a bit, but it does make me think, being there authentically, you can't be here's an approach you cannot take. You can't say, I'm going to do enough work to prove, to be able to plausibly claim that I tried my best if I fail. Does that make sense? Like, I'm going to sort of check the boxes to say, well, I tried, but you're working to sort of fail but not feel bad about it.
Interesting.
Does that make any sense?
I
That's
think
something
so.
that I feel like I've observed, where it's like, no, I did everything I was supposed to do, but it didn't work out for me. But if you go into it with that attitude of like, I'm going to check all those boxes so that it's not my fault if it doesn't work out, that I think you have a different approach and a different attitude and a different zest than if you go in saying, I'm not just trying to absolve myself if I fail. I'm going in to try to succeed.
Yeah. Well, yes, it does make sense. And we talk about failure means you're in the game. And so we actually, tell people failure is a part of this process. You're going to fail
Sure.
somewhere. We hope you don't fail completely, but failure should be a part of what you're doing here. And, not to be all like kumbaya, but it is about growth mindset, failing forward, failing up, however you want to talk about it. But failing means you're in the game. And that's again, the mindset shift from our lawyer brains who want to minimize risk, who, want to be very small, to the entrepreneurial brain of, all right, well, that didn't work. Let's pivot and figure out what works over here. And not seeing failure as something to hold us back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like having the lawyer brain of being like, I'm going to do everything I can do to prove that I exercised a reasonable standard of care in this case if I'm sued for malpractice, versus I'm going to go win this case.
Exactly. Right.
That's the distinction I'm talking about.
One more point on that. It's really, it's not linear. Growing a business, building a business is not linear. And the law wants us to be linear. If I do this, and this, then we should be safe. We should win, whatever. You could do this, and this in your business and still fail. And so you got to be willing to go in circles. You got to be willing to go sideways. It's not always going to be linear.
That's right. Like climbing Mount Everest, sometimes you have to go back a little bit, set up a base camp to inch forward. Absolutely. I could talk to you about this all day, and I look forward to talking to you more about this in various forums as we go through our careers. I just want to say again, I am so grateful to have you as a leader in our profession, particularly here in our home state. So thank you for everything you do, and I really appreciate you being on the podcast as well.
Thanks for having me, Mark, and thanks for promoting what we're doing and supporting what we're doing. We're glad to be in collaboration with you.
Thank you.